It is literally so hard listening to Belly Jeremiah shippers speak because it's like I can tell that you guys are only watching the show at a surface level because if you do look deep enough, then you'll have your answers, and you don't want that. You just want to live in delusion. Like, I think the word toxic is used too loosely. Like, I think you guys just throw the word around so much that now it just doesn't have meaning. But to my original point, Conrad is not toxic. Conrad is not a bad boy. I don't know where you guys got this narrative from. Maybe because they've labeled Jeremiah the golden retriever. Conrad is not a bad boy, guys. He is literally a nerd. He's going to do pre-med at freaking Stanford, like, and Jeremiah is a frat boy. Hello? I don't know how a story about a teenage boy who finds out about his mother having cancer and becomes really depressed because he's holding the secret close to his chest because his mother doesn't want anybody knowing this, and it kind of consumes him and it backs him up into a corner a little bit that makes him isolate himself from people. I don't understand where you got bad boy from that, because you saw him smoke once and he smoked and then Belly got at him for that, and then he never smoked again after that. Like, guys. But I saw some videos talking about, like, oh, people who ship Belly and Conrad can't even really go into why they like Conrad. I will get into why I like Conrad, and I will get into detail about it, and I will make a video, like an actual video with clips, so you guys can see everything, and then you guys can run rampant and call me and be delusional in my comments like you always do. I just find it very, 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 very wild that you guys think that poor communication skills equals toxic. Literally, what has Conrad done that's toxic? Like Chris has said in previous interviews, we like Conrad because of his flaws. But when we point out Jeremiah's flaws to you guys, suddenly all hell breaks loose. Like, he can apparently do no wrong. And we're going off of how this leads into the third book, and you guys are still screaming and crying and shaking and holding on for dear life. Nobody told you guys to get like this. It's a book to TV show adaptation. And when Jenny tells you guys that this happened in the books and you guys are in her face still crying about it, like, I don't know, what do you want? Like, what do you guys want?
See, as the episodes go by, the reviewers saying that Chris and Lola outshine Gavin slash Jeremiah in his own season makes so much more sense. Every single time they give like a little bit to Belly and Jeremiah, it is completely overshadowed with the Belly and Conrad scene. Like, let's talk about the song that was playing here. This song by Vera Blue called Mended is literally about a relationship that hasn't fully recovered from the downfall. She's saying that they're almost mended, but they're not there yet, you know? But for it to cut to this specific part of the song, while they're hugging, while they're not looking at each other, oh my god, what am I supposed to do when most of me still belongs to you? Closed. And I just need to laugh at Gavin saying this because the way this is all gonna backfire on Jeremiah is honestly very comedic to me. This interview was also very funny because you can tell Gavin hasn't read the last book. He calls the situation fair game. What are you talking about? Like, I genuinely, every time I see this, I don't understand what he's talking about. Like, even Jenny had to kind of go in on Gavin a little bit. Even though she wrote it, she was like, is it fair game, Gavin? Is it? Going back to this scene, it's really interesting because it basically shows you from before Belly even makes her decision and confirms she is never going to be over Conrad. There are still lingering feelings, and maybe if Jeremiah wasn't constantly shutting Belly down and making her feel like shit for loving Conrad. Maybe if they ever had like an actual progressive conversation about this, like, because this is a conversation you need to have if you're going to jump into a relationship. Jeremiah, you can't just side eye and be mean to her every time she's nice to your brother. They literally dated, and on top of that, he's your brother. They're always going to be around each other. I just don't understand how anybody expects Belly to be 100% open with Jeremiah about her feelings when every single time she tries to bring something up in regards to Conrad and her feelings, he shuts it down. But when he brings it up and she has to shut it down, it's like it doesn't make sense. Like what you guys are doing doesn't make sense. And it's so clear that you are not making it out of college together. I also want to talk about this moment because it goes back to episode 4, where Conrad tells Jeremiah it physically causes him chest pains, not being able to tell Belly that he loves her. Which is actually just wicked when you think about it, because this means Conrad's gonna be having chest pains for years. I hate it here. Anyways, Team.
Right, so let's just reestablish Conrad is here after dinner because he's specifically looking for a moment to get to talk to Belly. People complain he kept pushing her away or he never told her information. This was him trying to check to see if she was safe to open up to. And I also think he was trying to gauge if she still likes him because he actually is a bit insecure. Right off the bat, we're supposed to think Conrad is a bad boy because on the outside he's smoking. Oh, I'm shaking in my boots. So do Laurel and Susanna. And then in season 2, Taylor is also smoking when she's like a few days before going to volleyball camp, and she's an athlete, so Belly's complaints against Conrad are honestly really immature and hypocritical, and they hold him to a high standard and expectation that's typical of the rest of his family, expecting him to be the perfect child, always the best, always perfect, never making any mistakes, always like carrying the whole family image on his back. Belly's upset with Conrad for smoking, and he challenges her on this with the same energy. This is when Belly jumps in the water, and then she swims up towards him and cocks her head in a flirty manner, which clearly makes Conrad smile because he thinks, oh yes, like I'm getting somewhere with her. Belly's being a little bit sassy with him, but when he returns that same energy to her and says, do you even know what white matter is? I first took this as, oh my gosh, is he being condescending? But Belly is also being condescending, and when he returns the energy she's giving, she says, you said our brains are still developing. And this is actually interesting foreshadowing. It's kind of all trying to like still foreshadow like all of the tragedies that are going to happen in their youth and the poor decisions they're all going to be making because they're still so young and their brains are still developing. And then Conrad takes this moment to say, gosh, do you memorize every single word I've ever said? And for him, he was just trying to match the sass, and this was him seriously trying to flirt with her and gauge how she felt about him. But it was poorly delivered, and Belly received it as a total insult, and she was really embarrassed. From what we learn later on in the story, we should see that Belly has absolutely nothing to be embarrassed about because it's actually Conrad who admits and confesses time after time after time that he is the one who memorizes every word she said. So I don't think he meant this statement at all maliciously, but that's something you learn over time with him. He's the one who says, I thought cocoa was your specialty, clearly demonstrating that for him, he remembers it all too well. And then after their like almost kiss, he says, I've been like playing it over and over again in my mind. He pays attention to every single word she says. And this is the truth, they both do.
Okay, I was asked to do a video about the hugs from season 2, episode 3, and episode 7. Now, let me give you a little context about hugging and the body language behind that and what it actually is supposed to do. Hugs and physical touch in general help deactivate the part of the brain that responds to pretty much danger, stress, anything like that. Hugs tend to trigger a hormone that's called oxytocin, which is also, fun fact, known as the cuddle chemical in humans, which makes you feel safer and cared for. So for Conrad hugging Belly, that's his safety. Now, season 2, episode 3, in this scene, we get the hug where he lays his head on Belly's shoulder and he's dealing with a lot. This is right before prom. This is when Susanna's gone really downhill. But Belly doesn't know that yet. He talks about them possibly switching their medication. But what I want to talk about is the meaning behind the type of hug this is. Him laying his head on her shoulder. This is a comfort and closeness hug. This is a deep sense of trust. He's letting her into his personal space, revealing a side of him that he doesn't show to everybody. And this is his way of really communicating that trust and vulnerability with her. So therefore showing how important Belly is to him. Now let's go to season 2, episode 7. Now in season 2, episode 7, we get the conversation after the fight on the beach from the previous episode. And he's hugging her with both arms. And this is yet another source of comfort for him. Conrad holding Belly tight is an indication of his affection and love for her getting deeper, and he's wanting to keep her close to him because he doesn't want to lose her. Some guys are not good at voicing their feelings, so as the female, in Belly's perspective here, learning to read his body language and his actions would speak a lot louder of what he's doing. But then again, he needs to learn to communicate, and this is both of their problems. They both have a hard time communicating with each other, which is only going to get better with age and experience. But we also notice that he's hugging her tighter and tighter. And this is also a huge indication of his insecurities about her and whether or not she truly loves him or still wants to be with him, which we know it's not. He knows that she still loves him. But he wants to know if she still wants to be with him, like he wants to be with her. And you can see him squeezing her tighter and tighter, and this is just to keep her from going away. He wants to relish in this moment. He wants to not leave this moment at all because she is his safety. She's his comfort. She's the one person he can truly be himself around without the judgment. Not even judgment, just without having to put up this barrier of having to be the adult all the time. We see just so many times in this series of him being parentified by his parents and him always having to protect the younger kids. She's the one person that he doesn't have to do that with. He protects her because he loves her, but he doesn't have to put on a show in front of her. He doesn't have to be strong. Because at the end of the day, she will always be there for him.
State of Grace, your username. You left the comment. Also, it's not an accident that we left the season with Jeremiah on the bleachers, and yet Conrad and Belly are like the main protagonists kind of thing. I can't find the comment, and it's driving me bananas, but and I will tag you in this, but that comment sent me spinning, I swear, because I didn't even think about that. It's so true, and that's the whole point. That's the point. Jeremiah will always be on the bleachers. He'll always be the one observing, whereas Conrad and Belly will be like the active participants in this relationship, in this story, because this is the whole thing. This story is their love story. It's not Jeremiah and Belly's love story. It's Conrad and Belly's love story. They're the active participants. Like, at the moment, they're going through the time where they're not together, but it's still their love story. And I guarantee you, like, for those who haven't read book 3, just you wait and see. Even when she's with Jeremiah, best believe she's thinking about Conrad. Best believe. So I love this point that actually this closing scene was still making the impression, hey, Conrad and Belly are still the ones who are like on the court, in the house, doing their thing, whereas Jeremiah's the one watching her. That's not an accident. And for like people who are like which I understand, right? Like, I'm one to talk, but like for people who are like, this wasn't very accurate, like who the fuck goes to a volleyball camp? That's not the point. It's the point, and like suspend your disbelief for like 2 seconds, if you will. It's the point that he's watching her. He's the observer, he's looking in, and he like wants to be close with her, whereas Conrad never had to be the observer. He's the active participant. He's the one in her room, setting up, like, you know, Junior Mint, setting up the glass unicorn that he fucking gave her. That's the difference. That wasn't a mistake. That wasn't an accident. And like ever since your comment, I've been spinning and like so mad at myself for not picking this up because it's so true and I love it. I'm obsessed. Conrad is on the Jeremiah is on the bleachers. Conrad and Belly on the fucking court. That's not an accident. That's very intentional and I love it. I'm obsessed. Obsessed.